Hey, this is Cameron Batagler with Super Simple Data, and today we're going to talk about allow Azure services versus allow Azure trusted services. It's just one checkbox, but can totally change how you're getting to your services in Azure. Let's talk about it. Okay, let's get into it. I brought out the whiteboard because this gets really confusing really fast. And I'm going to draw with my left hand because I'm honestly foolish, but we'll work with it. So, the difference, just to put it out up front so you don't have to watch 5 more minutes of video, is allow Azure services literally allows all of Azure IP ranges into whatever you turn it on for, traditionally a SQL Azure database, while allow Azure trusted services allows only authenticated services that are sitting inside of your subscription or tenant at least. So the difference, when you turn on allow Azure trusted services, we're gonna make this into our cloud and any IP here. So any IP address within this is allowed through. So literally it is just a basic IP based firewall that your database now will let through. But the hard part is allow Azure services allows through a whole bunch of needed services too. Again, specific to SQL Azure database. If we go to things like Elastic Jobs or even Elastic Query, the import export service, any of those, you have to have allow Azure services turned on because it's a random IP address inside the Azure address space. So that means if you turn it off, you lose a whole subset of features that work with Azure SQL Database, but you gain the security of knowing exactly what's getting into the SQL Azure database. To be honest with how SQL Azure is set up at this point and the authentication methodologies, you're fine. Backend system is set up securely by default. It's built to be a public endpoint first and have security in place around that. Because of that, you honestly don't have to worry about turning on allow Azure services, but I know some organizations have policies around it. Now, if we go to the next side of this, where we talk about allow trusted Azure services, the workflow is very different. So we'll start again with our full cloud. And we're just going to say IP range again, because that's fun. Now, when we turn on allow trusted Azure services, it's actually a multi-step process to get into your data system or any other system that has allow Azure trusted services. First, it has to make an authentication call. So traditionally this is done with a managed identity. So we'll just call it an MI here, not to be confused with manage instance. It makes an auth call. If that authentication call is authorized in your service, then it will let it through to the service itself. Now, what's the difference here? This system is utilizing OAuth tokens via Azure Active Directory to get through the firewall. As long as it has an authorized token, it will let it through. This is really exciting from a blob storage perspective, in my opinion, because again, Azure SQL Database has the ability to call back into a blob storage account. But what if you have public access turned off entirely and you need to get into it? Well, turn on allow trusted Azure services on your blob storage account, and now your Azure SQL Database, you enable a managed identity, and you'd be able to authenticate to the blob storage, and it'll let it through because it's a trusted Azure service, but you've totally blocked any other access to the system. Okay, that's an overly complex issue in Azure. I personally am annoyed by it. I hope I made it a little bit easier so you can make valid decisions on your security in the future. If you're interested in doing that SQL Azure to blob storage connection with the managed identity, I have a blog article on it. There's also proper Microsoft documentation on it. I'll put the link for that down in the description. Check it out, see if it works for you. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments. I'm more than happy to help out, and honestly, I just love answering this stuff and hopefully can help make it easier for you.